Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today's video I'm so excited to do. I'm finally going to be ranking my 4 newest foundations that I have in my collection. I tried to get this video up as quick as I could, but to be able to have my full reviews, my full thoughts on the 4 foundations that I'm ranking. So I'm ranking the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation, the Dose of Colors Meet Your Hue Foundation, the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Hydrating Foundation, and the Urban Decay Stay Naked Foundation. So if you would like to see me rank these from 4th or my least favorite down to my first, my top favorite, let me go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so like I mentioned, I have been testing these out for a while. I really wanted to have full thoughts on everything, my full reviews, be able to give my pros and cons, how I best wear these, and all of that. So I have my list of notes here to go through this video, and I know a lot of people wanted to see the ranking style. I will say that besides number 4, my like 1, 2, 3 picks, let me say, I really like all of these foundations. I really like 1, 2, and 3, and it was so hard to rank those. Like 4th, I pretty much knew what was going to be 4th. 1, 2, and 3, I had the hardest time sitting down this morning to film. I still wasn't exactly sure what order I was going to rank these in. I made myself take all my notes first and then really looked at my notes and tried to get like to the nitty-grittiness of how I was going to rank these, because it was challenging. I did film this look. This was in my Monday Get Ready With Me. If you guys want to check that out, it was actually a live chat, but I will link it down below, and of course always list out all of my makeup. This was such a challenging ranking video, but like I mentioned, I kind of knew what was in 4th, and I almost lost the cap there. I kind of knew what was going to come in 4th. This was actually the first foundation that I tried out of all 4 of these, and when I first tried it, I was pretty darn impressed. I do have a first impressions on this foundation that I will of course link down below. Any first impressions, wear test reviews that I have on these foundations will all be linked in the description box. But this was the first one that I tried out of the 4, and I was like, this might be a tough contender to beat. And then when I tried the other 3, I was like, never mind, I lied. But this is the Urban Decay Stay Naked Foundation. Now, like I said, I do like all 4 of these foundations. I just really prefer the other 3 over this one. But I still don't think this is a bad foundation. Just personal preference to me, this is not what I prefer, especially over the other 3. I do have dry skin, so that, you know, is really a big factor when it comes to this. My personal preference when it comes to foundations is a medium or a medium buildable foundation, also a natural finish, or foundations that do lead more on the dewy, luminous, satin finish side. That is what I tend to prefer. With the Urban Decay Stay Naked, this foundation retails for $39. You do get 1 ounce of product in here. There are 50 shades. You do have plastic packaging and then a pump on here. The shade that I have been using the most is a 30NN. Like I said, there are 50 different shades, and they vary by kind of like shade intensity. They also vary by master undertone, and undertone, I believe, is how it goes. So it's a little bit of like a quiz when you're trying to pick out your foundation. 30NN is a decent shade match for me. It's a little bit light for me, especially right now in the throes of summer and being a little bit more, like I have just a little bit more of a tan right now, so it is a little bit light on me. Also, the undertone on this one was a little bit more yellow than I wanted it to be for a neutral undertone. It wasn't too bad though. Definitely other ones were a little bit more challenging with that, but I'm also going to be doing close-up swatches of this and also the swatch on my hands so you can see 30NN. But that's the shade that I have been using. So what I have written down for my notes on this one is that this does have more of a matte finish. So out of all 4 foundations that I am reviewing, this is the most mattifying foundation on my skin, because I don't prefer a mattifying foundation. That's kind of a big reason, you know, why this one went into the number 4 spot. I will say, I do think that it does have a medium to full coverage on it. Like I said, it does have the matte finish. I don't feel like I need to powder, or that I really want to powder my entire face when using this foundation, because again, it does have that more mattifying effect to it, so I don't feel like I need to add any more powder to my skin. I really don't get very like luminous. Like if I wear it for kind of like 11-12 hours, a little bit of my natural oils can start to come through through, but not too much, not anything to where I want to powder or feel like I would need to powder. And again, when I'm first applying it, I tend to avoid powdering my entire face because then it just does look too heavy on my skin. I do like to spray my face when I use this. I like to use a setting spray with it. You know, I'm a big fan of like the Urban Decay all-nighter sprays, or a spray that I feel like kind of helps kind of like lay down the makeup nicely, which is like the Morphe Continuous Setting Spray or a MAC Fix Plus. I like to use that with these as well. Some of my favorite primers to use with these, I prefer to go with a hydrating or a moisturizing primer, again because of the more matte finish to this foundation. I like my Smashbox Photo Finish Primerizer, the Catrice Prime and Fine, which I think is a dupe for the Smashbox and a little bit more hydrating. I've really liked using that one with the Urban Decay, or like the First Beauty Coconut Smoothing Primer, because it's a nice like moisturizing primer also, which I think pairs well with this one. Some of the pros that I wrote down, I do think that this is a very long wearing foundation. I did a wear test with this foundation and you could see that it did hold up really well. I don't think that it fades away easily. I think that it really sticks around for a long period of time. I also do think that it has buildable coverage to it, which is nice too, because you can get a nice medium coverage, you can build it up to more of a full coverage, you can kind of play around with it there, but it definitely is like a very solid medium yet buildable coverage. The cons that I wrote down was that it was just too mattifying for my skin, especially when I'm comparing it to these other three foundations. This, like I said, is the most mattifying, which is not my personal preference. But again, if you like more matte finish foundations, this one does have a really great wear time on it. If you like medium to buildable, medium to full foundations, I think that you would like this one as well, because again, the wear time really, I thought, was really fantastic on this one. It does wear very nicely, but for me and on my skin, I noticed that it can get a little bit heavy after, you know, several hours of wear. If we get into like the 9, 10, 11 hour mark, it starts to just feel a little bit heavy. And the times that I used it with, like when I was powdering my whole face to see how I liked that effect, I felt very makeup-y looking by the end of the night. You know, it just kind of didn't sit as nicely on my skin. It was almost like it was sitting on my skin versus like blending into my skin. I felt more like foundation and powder and all of that were sitting on top of my skin, and I felt like I looked very makeup-y. But again, those are my pros and cons on my dry skin, how I feel with this one. So there's that. I do think that it's great that there's 50 shades. There's a lot of different, you know, ways that you can mix up with your shade range. $39, I think that is actually the most, yeah, that's the most expensive foundation that I'm reviewing today. You do get the 1 fluid ounce. Again, I like the packaging. Wear time is great. It's just personal preference of mine. Wasn't an absolute favorite. This is where things will start to get real tough with 3, 2, and 1. And it's so fun. On my notes, I have 3, 2, and 1 all scribbled out with numbers, with like another number, and some of them, those are even scribbled out with another number, because I had such a hard time ranking these. But after careful consideration and watching the replays, number 3 is going to the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation. I feel like this might be a surprise for some because I really like this foundation. Again, I will have my first impression down below. I also did a review video and showed how I prefer to wear this foundation, and there's a wear test in there, and I have really high remarks to say about this foundation. I really do like this. Again, please know 3, 2, 1. I think they're all great. I just had to rank them somehow. So for the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation, this runs for $38. You get 1.01 fluid ounces, and it also comes in 50 shades, which is fantastic. This one has more of your natural luminous finish to it. I definitely can get pretty dewy when I wear this foundation. It also has a medium coverage to it, and to me it's pretty straight medium. It's not the most buildable foundation. You're really gonna get just like that solid medium coverage with this foundation. With the primer, I tend to like to wear something that's actually a little bit more of a mattifying primer, such as the First Beauty Pores Be Gone Matte Primer. Again, because this foundation, this one is the most luminous out of all of the foundations that I am talking about, but especially with like my top 3 here. This one is the most luminous, the most dewy finish foundation. I think that if you have dry skin, you might really enjoy this foundation, because I know that I do. But that's the primer that I like to use with it. I also do like to set my face with powder, because again, even after only a few hours of wear, like 3-4 hours of wear, I start to get really dewy. So if I powder my face, it still allows the foundation to be that luminous finish to it, but it's not too much, it's not overly dewy on me, and I can still go about my day and know that my skin is looking great when I do set it with a powder. I also do like to spray my face with this one, and I like to use something that's going to really like lock the makeup into place, as well as setting down the powder nicely, because like I said, I do typically always powder with this foundation. So again, like the Urban Decay All Nighter is a good one. MAC Fix Plus is another good one to use with this one. Some of the pros that I wrote down is that I really do love the dewy finish. I really enjoyed that luminous finish to the skin, especially if I kind of am cognizant of what primers and what powders and sprays I'm using with this one. I really love the finish that it gives to my skin. I also think that this one is very long wearing. In my review video, I said I was really very impressed that this is such a long wearing yet luminous finish foundation. Sometimes I tend to go for more of that just straight natural finish, because it also gives a very good wear time. I've noticed with luminous or dewy finish foundations, even on my dry skin, they can start to break up after, you know, just a few hours of wear, and I don't find them to be the most long wearing. But I was really impressed at the longevity, the wear time of this foundation, especially for that finish with it. Very impressed with that. I also think that it's nice and lightweight on the skin, which is nice. I've worn this foundation for 12, even 13 hours, and I still feel like it's very nice and lightweight. It doesn't look too heavy or too makeup-y by the end of the day. So the cons with this one, and why I decided to place this at number 3, is because, especially comparing this with the 2 foundations that I'm going to talk about next, this is the foundation that I have to think about the most, what other products I'm using with it. I think that if I were to go in with a like a very hydrating or a luminous primer, it would be like way too much for my skin. Like I said, I do want to make sure that I do set this with powder. I don't always set my foundations, mostly because I do have dry skin. But again, depending on the foundation, the primer that I'm using, and all of that, there's a lot of days where I just simply don't set my full face. I really feel like I have to do that with this one. So when I was thinking about this, I was like, you know what, if this was something where like I just put together a makeup bag quickly, maybe I'm going into the town next to us to do some shopping and meet with friends. A lot of times I just leave in the morning and I actually do my makeup in the car once I get to town. I will, you know, like put on just like a few of my like basic staple products for makeup. This is one, if I took out of town and I didn't bring my powder, I would like reconsider, do I really want to put this on? Like, how long am I going to be wearing it? Because I know that I would get, you know, quite luminous, that I would really want to powder my face. So that to me was the biggest reason that I decided to put this at number 3. I still really enjoy this foundation. I would recommend it, especially if you have dry skin. I think that it's so nice. I just have to be aware of the products that I'm using with it to make sure it looks the best on me. So that's the big reason. I also put down that you can't really play around with the coverage, at least from what I have found. It's medium coverage. It's not super buildable. You're probably not going to get full coverage. So there's that. I mean, that was just another thing I wanted to mention. I do use a sponge with my foundation. That's typically just what I prefer. There's times where I try brushes with my foundations also, just to see, but typically I just prefer to use a sponge. I think that it looks more natural on the skin, and again, I don't know if it's because I have dry skin that I like to have like some of that moisture coming back in. I don't really know, but I just prefer a sponge, and that's what I would prefer with all 4 of these foundations as well. Definitely with the Urban Decay. I did try the Urban Decay with a brush also, definitely because that one's more mattifying and a little bit more thicker. I would for sure recommend a sponge. But the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous, I think this is a great foundation. I think she did a really good job. Those are just like a few of my cons of why it came in at 3rd. When I was doing my first 2 videos with this one, I had the shade 250C, and that was such a terrible foundation shade matching for me. It was pretty awful. It had a very yellow undertone, even though it was cool. Like 250 was supposed to be a cool undertone. It was very yellow to the point where it was almost like greenish on me. I know a couple people mentioned that in the comments, and I thought the same thing. I thought it on camera, I thought it in person as well. So I went back to Ulta and I was able to swatch a few of the shades, and I ended up going with 220N. So the swatch that you see me insert into these clips here is going to be the 220N. I do think that this is more of a neutral undertone, which is great. The color even matches me better as well, but much better job on the undertone. I will say that I felt like the shades were a little bit confusing trying to pick this out. I did purchase this one myself. It was a little bit confusing with the shade match, but there are 50 shades, so there's a pretty good range there also with the Anastasia, but that is coming in at 3rd place. Moving on to number 2. Man, 1 and 2, so close, so hard to decide, but at number 2, that is going to Dose of Colors Meet Your Hue Foundation. To be honest, before I even tried this foundation, I had in my mind that this was going to be number 4. I was not hearing the best reviews on this foundation. I was also having a lot of people say it's so matte on the skin, and I was like, dang it, I thought it was supposed to be more of a natural finish, like shoot, because I did purchase this myself also from Ulta Beauty, but just to be honest, I really thought this was coming in 4th place, and then for a hot second there, I had this in 1st. It really took writing down my notes and looking at the pros and cons to decide that this was going to be number 2. This one really surprised me. So this is the Dose of Colors Meet Your Hue Foundation. It retails for $36. You get 1 fluid ounce. There are 42 different shades, and this one to me is a natural matte finish, but it's almost like a satin matte. Like, it's not super matte on my skin. I would still say the Urban Decay is more of a mattifying finish than this one here from Dose of Colors. So and it is a medium to full coverage. I think that you can really get that full coverage if you want to, or if you use a brush, because I've tried to brush with this also. Again, I just prefer to use a sponge. I feel like I like the coverage a little bit more. It just shears it out a tiny bit to get me to that medium coverage, but I do think that it's a medium to full coverage. For the primer, I actually like using the Fenty Beauty Hydrating Primer with this one, or again that First Aid Beauty Coconut Smoothing Primer. Those are 2 that I found that I really like. Something to just a little bit more moisturizing. The Fenty has a little bit more of like a satiny finish to it, so I think that those pair really nicely with this. I don't feel like I need to powder my skin with this either, because I think the wear time is really nice on it, but because it does give it a little bit more of a matte finish, I don't feel like I have to powder with this one, but I also can. Versus the Urban Decay, where like I straight don't want to powder because it's too much. I still can with this one. It's just not an absolute necessity. Again, I do like to spray my face with this one. With this one, I could use like even the Anastasia Dewy Set, which is just a nice kind of like dewy spray, if you will. I think that one looks nice with this because it is mattifying. I can't use that spray with absolutely everything because it is very dewy, so like I wouldn't want to use it with the Anastasia foundation, if that makes sense, but it pairs nicely with this one also. For my pros, I really do like the finish on this one. I was worried that it was going to be too matte, and the first time I tried it, which I do have my first impression video with this one in here that I will link as well, as I was going through, I really liked it when I put it on because I felt like it looked nice and natural. I could tell as it kind of, you know, started to set down that it did look more matte. So that's why with this one, I like to use the sprays. I like to use even like glowy products with this one, because I just think it helps kind of bring some of that glow back to my skin, a nice highlighter and all of that. So like I said, after it kind of sets down, it is more matte, but even after just like a couple hours, 2-3 hours, I feel like it turns back to looking more of like this natural satin matte finish. So it's not too mattifying on the skin. Again, Urban Decay is going to be the most mattifying that I'm talking about, but it's really nice and natural looking. It's not the most natural. Anastasia is like natural luminous. This one is like natural satin matte, I guess I would say, but I like it even on my dry skin. And again, once I started the comments, you know, people saying it's too mattifying, it's too heavy, I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna like it. I actually really like this foundation. It actually came down to 2 and 1, which you've already guessed what number 1 is at this moment, but I had to put number 1 on today again just to be sure, because I almost had this at number 1, and then again I put my notes down. I was like, okay, it's gonna come in at number 2. But so I really like the finish to it. I really do like the coverage. It's that medium to buildable, so you can kind of play around a little bit with it. I really like the medium coverage with the sponge. I think that it's really nice. Again, wear time. I'm really very impressed at the wear time on all 4 of these foundations. Again, this holds up so well, and it's one of those that I feel like after that kind of like 2-3 hour mark, I feel like that's what my foundation is going to look like for the next, you know, 6 hours or whatever it's going to be, however long I'm going to wear my makeup. That's what it's going to look like. It doesn't fade, it doesn't break down. I just think that it looks so beautiful on the skin, so I've been very impressed by that. The cons, really the only con that I wrote down is that it can give that slightly more matte finish, and I don't feel like I have to work as hard with this foundation as I do the Anastasia. I don't have to be as aware of my primers, I don't have to be as aware of like powder and sprays and all of that. I feel like with the Anastasia I have to work a little bit more, be a little bit more aware. I mean, this one I still do have my preferences of like glowy products or like, you know, a nice beaming highlight to kind of bring some of that dewiness back into my skin, but especially after it sits for a few hours, then I just feel like it looks like a really nice finish to it. So this one actually had me quite impressed, the dose of colors. I'm so happy about that too. I will say though, for the shade I got 116, which is it just says light to medium on here. It does have more of a yellow tone than I would prefer, so that's a bummer, but it's not too bad. Like the Anastasia, I couldn't take myself seriously wearing that foundation. The shade match was so wrong. This one is just like it's a little bit off. Like, I can make it work, you know. It's just a little bit yellow. All right, so we all know now what number 1 is going to be, and that is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Hydrating Foundation. Well, knock my socks off and call me Sally, because who saw this coming? I really did not like the original, the Pro Filter matte foundation from Fenty. I didn't roast that foundation, let's be serious. It just didn't work for me. It didn't work on my dry skin. It was too matte, it was too full coverage. And people were so excited about Fenty Beauty releasing, they were so excited about the inclusive shade range, that if you didn't like that Fenty foundation and you were daring to put that on the internet, people were coming after you and calling you the worst names over a foundation. It kind of scared me from the Fenty brand as a whole. I was almost scared to try the next product because I thought, what if I don't like that? I'm actually scared of the internet backlash. But I kept saying, you know, I kept trying to reiterate, I have dry skin. This is my preference. Like, this foundation, not a lot of full coverage mattifying foundations work for me. It's just, it is what it is. But I'll be so excited if they come out with a hydrating foundation. That would be great. Well, guess what? They did, and it's my number 1 pick. Hallelujah. I also, quite exciting, this one was sent to me from Fenty Beauty. I don't know how they were able to find my name, but they did, and they did send this over to me, and I got to do like a little Instagram story with their foundation and also their primer. So that was very, very cool. Of course, if I get something in PR or not means nothing to me, because I had 2 PR and 2 I purchased myself. We got a best, we got a worst, and the 2 myself were in the middle. So that means nothing to me. But a little bit about the Fenty Beauty Hydrating Foundation. This retails for $35. So this is actually this is the most affordable. We have Fenty at $35 and then Dose of Colors at $36. Anastasia $38, UD $39. So this is also the most affordable by a whole $1, and you get the most amount of product in here at 1.08 fluid ounces. Also available in the 50 shades. So again, I feel like shade ranges were pretty good on everything here too. Pretty standard to the 1 fluid ounce as well. Nothing was less than that, so that's awesome. This one here, I said, has a natural finish. Out of all of the foundations I'm talking about, this one here is the most natural finish. It is what I have on my skin today. So again, I got ready this morning at 10:30 on a live. It's about 3:30 right now. So I did want to mention that. But it has a very natural finish to it, which I think is nice. And it is a medium to full coverage foundation, so you can play around a little bit as well. I, again, prefer using a damp sponge with this one. I do have my wear test along with a review, which of course will be linked. The primers that I like using with this one, I really do like using the Fenty Primer with this one. The first couple times I tried this foundation, I was trying it with the Fenty Primer, mostly because I had also got sent that primer and it was new and I was trying it out. Like I said, it does have like this more satiny finish to it, which just gives like a, it just pairs really nicely with this one, with the Dose of Colors one. I think is just really beautiful. Also gives like a little bit of tack to it, which I like as well. Or another primer that I realized I liked with this one is the one from Elcie Cosmetics. That one is also, it reminds me a little bit of the Fenty, just kind of more like satiny. Like, it's not like an overly dewy primer, but it's not mattifying. It's not just like hydrating or smoothing. It just kind of gives like a nice satin look to the skin, if you will. So those are 2 primers that I really like. Again, I wrote down that I can powder my skin with this one. It's not necessary. I did not powder my skin today with this one. It just kind of is going to depend. I did also spray my face with this one with the Anastasia Dewy Set. So again, I feel like I can spray my face. I can use a dewy setting spray. I can use, you know, more of like a regular spray like the MAC Fix Plus or something like that, and I think that it's going to look nice. This is truly a foundation that I feel like I just don't have to think about a lot. I don't really have to be really particular with primers, with other products, with sprays, with powders. So that's, you know, a big reason why this was coming in at number 1. This is one that I can throw into my travel bag and just be like, oh, this is the primer I put in? Cool, that'll work. Like, it's just very, like, it's a non-fussy foundation, if you will. Doesn't make me work hard. So some pros that I wrote down with this one, that it does have the natural finish to it, which I prefer. Again, I love a good natural finish foundation. This one is very, very skin-like on the skin. Also that a little bit goes a long way. So, you know, I feel like with the amount of product that you'll get in here, this will really take you a long way, because truly a little bit goes a long way. That's actually also what I wrote down as a con though. Then it can be easy to go overboard with this foundation. The first time I tried it, I was like, oh, because I did like my standard, you know, like 2.5 pumps. You do not need a lot of foundation with this, and it's going to cover everything, and it's going to give you, again, a medium to full coverage. It's very easy to go full coverage with this foundation if you're not careful. I also said that it's long wearing. Again, all 4 foundations I feel like have been very long wearing. This one is no exception, has a fabulous wear time to it, and it's also very lightweight and, like I said, very skin-like on the skin, which I do enjoy. Again, that one con that I wrote down is that it's easy to go overboard with this. It's easy to apply too much, and because I don't always love full coverage, if I'm not careful with the amount of product that I'm using, I can go a little bit overboard. But truly, this foundation I think is so great. I highly recommend it. It says that it's a hydrating foundation, and so when I heard hydrating, I first kind of thought of like it's going to be more of a dewy finish or a luminous finish like the Anastasia. It's really not like overly dewy. Like I said, I feel like it has more of like that natural finish, slightly, like just slightly leaning more on, I would even just say like the dewy side, not even like super luminous or anything like that, just like slightly more dewy. I don't feel like this one gets matte at any point, at any time. I really don't feel like I get a matte finish with this one. I also feel like maybe this is one that you could manipulate easily with the primers and your powders and your setting sprays and things like that to kind of make it your, you know, what you love the most on your skin. But I'm just really impressed with this one. I like the way it feels on the skin. Again, it is what I have on my face today, and I'm very impressed by that. So that is my foundation ranking video. What do you think? I'm gonna be so curious to get your comments, because this was a hard one for me, guys. This was a hard one for me to rank. I had to write down all my notes, just not even for like filming this video, just to help me rank them, because it was a tough one. I think all 4 of these are really good though. I would recommend all of them. Again, it's just going to depend on your skin type and what you're looking for in your foundations. But I would love to know if you've tried any of these. If you have, maybe how would you rank them? Let us know in the comments down below. But other than that, if you guys did enjoy this new ranking video, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up. I hope that you also consider subscribing before you go, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.